Hello, everybody, and welcome to Zenful Conversations. As you may or may not know, we are beginning, it's only been, what, a little bit less of a week now since summer started, but our Zenful Conversations Summer of Love poetry series. And I'm loving it already. We've had a few conversations, we've got a lot of workshops coming up. My name is ZenJen Brown, and today we have the opportunity to sit with poet Christina Norcross. And I want to just feature her book real quick before we get into conversation. The Poetry Apothecary. I just love the whole premise of this book. I love and the artwork on the front of this book, for those of you that are listening and is not able to see, is just gorgeous. The colors are amazing, and I like the moon cycles across the top here. But welcome, Christina Norcross, and thank you so much for joining in conversation today.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for inviting me to be a part of your beautiful series for the summer. It's just an honor to be here and a true pleasure. I think in our pre-chat, we were talking about how this is our first time meeting face to face, as it were, virtually in person, Zoom fashion, and so this is so much fun after chatting via email and text message about the workshop series that we'll be doing in July. And then you invited me to do this pre-series conversation. So this is just wonderful to be here. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks so much for saying yes. Yeah, we were talking about that before we came on because um I'm actually having a lot of conversations with people that I don't really know, and it's a little bit fun because you don't know what you're getting into. We don't really know each other.
Or maybe
And
we've
so
known
it's
each
like,
other for many
well,
lifetimes. Who knows?
that is true. That is true. Thanks for throwing that out there. And see, this is where I love this field of writing because it can go anywhere. These conversations can go into spirituality, they can go into a pretty disciplined thing. I mean, there's the variety of conversations that can come from this is huge. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to I need a sip of tea. Hold on. One of the reasons that I'm not in the studio, I'm in my living room without the fancy lighting. Um, I just wanted to have some more authentic, vulnerable conversation, unscripted and unedited. So this is what it is. And I'm wanting to show more of our humanness. Uh, so I just want to start by because this isn't really an interview, it's just a conversation, although I'll probably ask you some questions because you are a beautiful poet with how many collections? What led you to writing? How long you been writing? Give me a little bit of information about who you are, because I only know this one book from listening to just stumbling upon you.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. No, the Poetry Apothecary is my 10th poetry collection. I've been writing like most writers since grade school. I remember my very first poem that I wrote in sixth grade. And any friends that will be listening to this from Sparta, New Jersey, will know that it was Mrs. Davidson's class at Alpine School. And I wrote a poem called Where Do Rainbows Come From? And it really started there. So I have my sixth grade English teacher to thank. And then I continued to write in junior high. One of my books is dedicated to Mrs. Joan Flanagan, who was my eighth grade teacher. She was a huge influence on me. And then I continued writing in college just for myself. I attended the University of Ottawa in Canada, and I was a member of the Fulcrum newspaper staff there. Did a bit of writing there, but it wasn't really until my last couple of years, I was an English literature major, that I started writing in my spare time. Whenever I wasn't working on an essay, I was writing. I started with short story writing, a bit of poetry, little vignettes. I didn't really know where I was going with it or what I was going to do. I just knew that I had to write, which I think most writers or creative people will tell you that, whether you're a painter, a singer songwriter, a dancer, a musician. We all write because we have no other choice but to write. That's part of writing is life. Life is writing.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think.
Don't let me not come back to that because
Okay.
that's something we need to talk about, but I don't want to stop you.
Sure, sure.
Mm.
Um, so, okay, wait. The question was, how did I start writing? I went all the way back to
Yeah.
sixth grade. My first book was a collection of ekphrastic poetry called Land and Sea, which came out we did two editions, either 2007, 2008. And I worked in collaboration with a painter from Long Island, Irene Ruddick. And it took us 2 years to create this collection together. She would send me a painting, and she lived on Long Island. I lived in New Hampshire at the time. And it would take me 2 weeks to write a rough draft of a poem in response to one of her paintings. So it was a really
Wow.
beautiful project. Um,
Yeah.
I went on to do another ekphrastic collection a little bit later, I think 2013 or 2014, with Patricia Bashford of Massachusetts. And her medium of art was fine art photography. And so she would send me, and likewise, I was living in New Hampshire, not super close to where she was in Massachusetts. Then I moved here to Wisconsin, and we, continued with our project. And it was a long distance collaboration again. She would send me a photograph by email. I would take a couple weeks or so to create the rough draft of something, and it was really a conversation between photography and poetry. And for my first ekphrastic book, it was a conversation between paintings and poetry. So ekphrastic poetry was really my first love. And then I've written in so many different genres and styles. But there's something magical for me about writing about visual art,
Mm. Mm.
for sure. I think it's because the poem takes you on a journey. I've always said that. But the painting or the photograph takes you on a journey. It's asking you to tell the story behind the image. And so that fascinates me. It's like going on this grand adventure, and you have your backpack of tools with you, like your pen and your paper and your notebooks and your stones and crystals, because I'm a stone person. And you just take everything with you, and you trust that that painting or photograph is going to take you somewhere magical.
Well, I have a puppy. Come here. Let me let me get him to be quiet so I can hear myself think.
That's okay.
Come over here.
Aw.
Oh man. There's my
Oh
little
my
baby.
goodness. What a
This
sweet.
poetry poodle.
Oh, what a sweetheart. I'm
He
so
is. He's a good little boy. His name is Lucky, and
lucky.
he actually he came down from the heavens on my 60th birthday and landed right here in my lap. He's a rescue
Oh,
poodle.
oh,
Little 10 pounds. I've got another one too. His name is Buddy, and Buddy's 12, and Lucky's
oh,
here's like two,
oh.
3 years old. They estimate him. So we've had him just about a year, Lucky. Um, but
Well, he
we
looks
call them.
very well loved and very
Oh,
comfy
they're
there.
spoiled beyond belief, these two. I'm the one that's abused around here. Yeah, we call them the poodlums.
The Poodlums, that's so cute.
Um, yeah, well, back to sixth, eighth grade there.
Sure.
Um, I was a rainbow girl. I liked rainbows. And I'm wondering if somebody, because I do not have experience with writing, like other than essays or newspaper articles or, things like that. I have written my fair share of that kind of stuff. And it was interesting to do, and I'm glad I did it and all that stuff. But creatively, I would say that why I'm here in this space now is my healing journey has taken me through the route of yoga, and that's how I find my healing. I would have enjoyed, let's just put it that way. I'm sure I would have enjoyed knowing about writing sooner to go through some of the process of the healing with the writing. I think it's a good friend and companion to have you help process stuff. But I've
Absolutely.
already yeah, it really is. I mean, and it might take a minute to get there if you're not a natural writer, which I wasn't, and I'm still not, you know? I have this little booklet. That's what I'm trying to trying to use for lighting, but actually it doesn't work, so I'm just gonna shut it off. Um,
I'm
so I
with
used
yeah, I'm with you.
yeah.
I think I've um, I started off. I mean, I always wrote. That's something that was just within me, and but I didn't set out on the path to be a writer initially. I ended up
Mm,
transferring and becoming an English major, but I was a musician. I studied classical voice and opera in New York City. I was a dancer. I trained.
that's right, I read that about you, yeah.
So, and I only bring it up because I made a little list for myself because we're coming in unscripted. I wanted something for myself to go on, and I came up with a list of like what might ZenJen ask me, I was thinking in addition to writing, creative writing being a healing modality, I was thinking of what other things in my life have been healing for me, and I had a very long list, which makes me happy to know. But dancing and singing were among those things for me. Um,
Mm,
they are because movement is medicine. I keep hearing this phrase
expression,
lately.
yeah.
Healing is movement is medicine.
Mhm.
Music is medicine. My two sons are both singer songwriters. They're both still in college at UW Madison in Wisconsin. They both perform quite a lot. And I feel so good knowing that they have songwriting as a healing tool for themselves.
Yeah, right,
Mhm.
and that's actually I'm in process of finding my relationship with this writing, and I don't know, it might be songwriting or something like that. You can allow it to be, whatever. Yeah, that's awesome that they have that at this stage in life.
Yes, because those teen years are they can be quite tumultuous, and you're becoming more of who you are, and we're always in a state of becoming, all of us at any
Mhm,
age, but
mhm.
especially those formative years of high school and college, you're finding your voice in this world. And
They're
so teen,
powerful, powerful influences, not
yeah,
enough wisdom under your belt to really have a super good grip on it. Yeah, I understand that. That's awesome that they have that at this game, this stage of the game. That's wonderful.
and there
Yeah.
are so many poets that I know, so many writers. I'm not just friends with poets, I'm friends with fiction writers too. But there are so many writers who I know who they have so many other mediums in which they create. Poets who are, one of my close friends, Jeannie Roberts, who is a Wisconsin poet, also Minnesotan poet. She is an amazing visual artist. So I have poets in my network who are painters, photographers, quilt makers. I make jewelry in my spare time for fun too. I mean, because it makes sense, doesn't it? That if you create in one medium, that your creative brain is drawn to create in other mediums as well. And that is healing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. It's just it's interesting because I'm coming at this at a different angle. So I'm actually seeing stuff that I didn't see before uh in this yoga process of healing through yoga. I've I'm at the top level of education that you could get. I became, in October, I received my 2.5 year, I was working on certified, internationally certified yoga therapist. And there's only 68 schools worldwide that offer that accredited course, which one just happened to be where I did all of my training. Um, so in
And
this whole journey of,
I'm interrupting you. What was your
no, go
journey?
ahead.
How did you come to yoga to begin with? How did that begin?
I was, in denial of life's circumstances. I gotta say there was some victim in there too. I was stuck in that space for 10 to 15 years, overstimulated. It did not process my emotions and everything until my body told me it's not going to go like that anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, just shy of 50 years old, I quit drinking. And then I realized this shit's really, really hard without the alcohol.
Right?
Because it was hard with it. It trying to pretend this isn't
Mhm.
real or whatever it is. Um, anyway, I realized I am the energy of love and I need to, I'm gonna, you know, I'm running out of time. So I need to love myself and realize I am the energy of love and I cannot control these other things.
Mhm.
And so anyway, within 4 months there in April, I got certified as a meditation instructor because I thought, okay, I need to deal with this without a crutch. And that worked it worked some, but then 2016, my body physically said, "Hey, you need to pay attention to me too." So in
Yeah.
January 2017, I signed myself up for the gym, and my body loved it and responded very well. I was 52, really doing some ugly self-talk with myself, but my body was feeling good from the movement.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
where I started was in that back corner of the room. You come in and hope nobody sees you back here.
Sure.
Then it was feeling so good, I realized I need to see the teacher because what am I looking at? I'm looking at these flunkies and I'm not doing it right because I can't see the teacher anyway. So I kept moving up. And within 6 months, I was teaching the class. I got certified for that and started teaching class and then started teaching class and then moved over here to the west coast of Florida, the Gulf Coast, and um, signed up for a newsletter at this place called Heartwood Yoga Institute. And that's one of 68 schools worldwide that offer this therapy class that's accredited by the International Association. Anyway, so I just signed up for it because they labeled it as yoga for 50 plus.
Perfect. Perfect.
So I
So,
signed up for my own healing
right.
and that and so that's how and then the subjects just blew my mind, blew it out the window. This is some cool stuff I started learning. Oh my God, it was just,
Yeah.
I was in heaven learning all this stuff. And wouldn't you know, I fell in love with myself all over again and found who I was and, did the whole training again. But in the yoga therapy, one of the things that I realized is one of the healing modalities, no matter what the ailment situation is journaling and
Mm.
writing. So
Absolutely.
writing is one of the things. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to write. And that's where I'm at. I immerse myself in it until I become it. But I
I
have
love
this need to write though. But I think to me it's like it's yoga on the page because
mm.
like I do a lot of it's about the energy and the flow because I do crystal, the bowls.
Sound
I do these out with the trees, which is just amazing experience for me and the trees, I'm sure they tell me so. They tell me.
yeah.
Um, so and the yoga and the meditation and I'm not into hot, heavy breath work. I'm not into hot, heavy yoga. I do really everything's way on the calm side.
Yeah.
So to me, it's all about that. And I expect the writing to just be more of that
Mm. Yeah.
water, more of that water
Absolutely.
flow in my life.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I love your phrase, yoga on the page. That's like, I just wrote that down because that's such a wonderful phrase, yoga on the
yeah.
page.
Well, I think that comes from my mentor, Jenny Shattuck, Jenny East, um, who is an author as well. But she's, let me just say, the enlightened writer. is her latest book. Let me just go see if I can grab that quickly.
Sure.
Maybe, maybe.
I feel like I'm being interviewed by your dog now. Oh, wait. Wait, the doggy just jumped off the chair.
Whoops, come on, Luck. Come on, Luck. Come on, Luck. Come on up, baby doll. He's gonna be over there. The Enlightened Writer is Ginny's newest book. That's Ginny East. What's cool about this book is it goes through writing for your chakras and different memoir and creative writing inspired by the philosophy and practices of yoga.
Wow.
So it brings yoga to the page, you know?
Absolutely.
So
I
I
love
have
it.
to, when she gets settled to her new place, I'm going to get her to come on, see if I can get her to do that. But anyway, back to your book, The Poetry Apothecary, Christina M.R. Norcross. What's the M.R. for?
Oh, so I'll hold my copy up too. M is my middle name, Maria, and R is for Raskoff, which is my maiden name. So Norcross is my married name, and the R is to honor my dad's side of the family, to show that even though I have been a Norcross since 1995, I will always be a Raskoff. So,
Yeah,
and
that's wonderful.
this whole book is actually dedicated to my father, Roger William Raskoff. He passed away in 2020 during COVID lockdown. So
Ah,
there's a whole section in this book on grief and loss called Grief Work. So it's divided into different sections, and the whole idea is that it's not a book to be read from beginning to end or in any kind of sequential order. My thought is that you can, on any given day, whatever you feel that you need, like if you need a poem to help you deal with grief and loss, then certainly flip open to that section. Or if you feel as though you need a sense of human connection, flip to the section on connection or inspiration, or the very first section of the book, R, and each section starts with RX as if it's a prescription. So RX for
yeah, for that
and
that is let me just for those that are listening, I can't see the contents, the table of contents is laid out with the section RX for nourishment. And then it has listed, I don't know what, you got 10, 12, so many different poems there that you can go to uh for the nourishment. And I love that. And then there's RX for healing, for raising humans, which I thought
yeah.
was quite lovely. And yeah, the grief work for sure. Um, I love how it's set up. What I can't even what inspired that to do it like that. I think it's brilliant.
So this took about, this represents about 3 years of poetry writing. And when it came time for me to compile the book together and get ready to submit it and send off to my publisher, which is Kelsey Books, by the way, they've published my past 4 books in a row. And a wonderful, I love working with Karen Kelsey. She's a wonderful editor and publisher. Um, so when I was getting ready to, shape the book, make it neat and tidy and organized to send off, I realized that the poems were telling me that they were in different sections. I'm like, okay, here's a grouping of poems that are all about nourishment, whether it be for the body, for the soul, And so
Mhm.
then I was so excited because I thought, great, now because I like being organized. So I love the idea of putting the poems into groupings. And I also love the idea of, like, I think of these poems as being spiritual vitamins, and the old adage, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, why can't a poem a day or writing a poem a day keep the doctor away?
Yes.
You know, please
Yes.
take your antibiotics if you're deathly ill with pneumonia. I'm not going to prescribe my book for pneumonia. However, for other things in life,
Well, I think it's true. I think it's real. What is it? Jim Rohn, the late great Jim Rohn, motivational speaker, one of my favorite guys. Well, he said it's like it's easy to do. Like, what if eat the apple a day? What
Mm.
if it's true? It's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's easy not to do. So but this, if you did that every day, it would change your life. I'm not necessarily saying the apple. I think the reading and the writing, mostly the writing to process. So you read a poem and you write about it.
Writing to process. Yes, and that's what I occasionally teach writing workshops, in-person writing workshops, virtual workshops, and I always begin a writing prompt with, "Here's a gorgeous poem I'd like all of us to read together," as a source of inspiration and a launching off point, and then we go with the prompt, because we need a little bit of input, and then we can do our output, and it's always helpful. And life gives us plenty of input on a daily basis, and it doesn't have to be gorgeous writing. In fact, I'm a big fan of Natalie Goldberg's book about the writing process, writing down the bones, thunder and
Yeah.
lightning, and she talks about, get get it. It doesn't have to be a fancy journal, although I love fancy journals, and I just
Mine.
fill
I got
them and
mine.
fill them
Yeah.
and buy more, But she's like, get a basic notepad and some old pens, and like don't think you have to be fancy with it, and set the timer for however many minutes, and pen to paper and write. Do not worry about where the commas go right now. Don't, like, proofreading and editing happens later, but what you want is that flow that's coming from the brain, from the crown chakra, as it were, and out, like brain, pen, paper, out on the page. And don't censor
That's
yourself. Just write,
yeah.
write. Stream of consciousness. Yeah.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it. Um, and I love it because I'm actually surprised at what has revealed itself that I didn't even know was energy or thoughts in me. I had no idea some of this stuff, and it's interesting. It's also very interesting to see the wide variety of different thought processes from the same prompt.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's
So, and this
the
is what we'll
fun.
be doing in our workshop.
Yeah, it'll be
So,
fun.
yeah, and it's not a necessity to share your writings by any means. It's never forced. But let me just say, from somebody coming into it without being any writing, my fluidity and words, and that's why I'm thinking, oh, this is why I've been guided to writing. So I can use a few more words. I just use like very limited on my language. I'm like realizing that big time. But anyway, after you share, it feels like such a release off of
Absolutely.
your chest. But there's that part of me that wants to, of course, write something that is jaw dropping.
In order to get to the beautifully polished, you know, gem of a poem or essay,
Um,
you have to write the not so great stuff first. Like, there's the rough draft, and then the rough draft, and then the polished version, and so in order to get over here with the gemstone, you need to start with like the fits and starts and not quite right, but people don't always realize that the writers don't,
no,
like, you don't
it's
birth something
downloaded.
fully formed. Yeah, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
completely fully formed.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. You're not alone in saying that. They're saying, and if Marjorie Moorhead said that, yeah, you really gotta kind of enjoy the what did she call it? I can't remember exactly what she called it, but the going back in and kind of
Sure.
nerdy stuff, I think she said with the words. But yeah, well that probably takes patience, doesn't it?
It does, but then I think it's important not to put too much pressure on yourself either. Like, if something isn't flowing, or if you can't quite find the right word, that's when you go for a walk. That's when you do your breath work or meditation or yoga, and then maybe come back to it in an hour or two. Maybe you come back to it in a week. It has its own timing. and that's okay too. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to let go of the idea of perfection and perfectionism, because that's like death to writing is perfectionism. Like that's
Yeah.
not gonna work. You want to tap into that higher level energy that's trying to connect with you as the writer. And in that sense, my rough drafts usually come out very quickly. It doesn't mean that they're perfect, but I know that something's coming through, something wants to be written, an idea, a phrase, and usually the first 2 to 3 lines I just hear and I write it down, and then I just follow it. Like I'm following that kite string and seeing
Hmm.
where it takes me. But something's definitely coming through. Not, I don't get the whole poem. Like I'm not gifted a fully formed entire poem, but I'll get
Right.
those first few lines and then I'll just
Well,
keep writing.
I think Ram Dass called it holy inspiration, didn't he?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. And
Kimberly
I,
Goldberg.
I, I can relate somewhat because the women's workshops that I do in retreats, like I'll get this whole thing come in. It's like I got to write it down before I forget it. Like the whole premise, everything. And it's
Mm,
nice. Wow, cool. Blah, 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 blah. Beginning, what this, that, and the other. Great. And then I have to fill in the details of it
sure.
all. And then that is what's like, geez, wow. Why don't you think things through before say,
What's the phrase? Or art is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So it's hard work, but like it's hard work that you love though. Like it's a labor of
oh,
love. Yeah, yeah.
it's one of these, like, you kind of have to do it.
Yes.
It's what you were talking about with the writing.
Yeah.
So it's just processing, and actually that's been part of my healing because that came through one I mean, we had to for part of our training had to show that we could lead in a workshop type atmosphere. You can't be an advanced thing without it, you know what I mean? So we had to show that, and I really liked it. And it what it did was, to me, helped. That's part of my healing, to create this. I mean, they're titled "She Let Go," and we had Sapphire Rose's poem in it. It was inspired about that. And then we had a smudge ceremony, and we wrote down things that we released and burned that. And then we got smudged and came back in. And I have another workshop where the women stand in a circle and they crown each other with a tiara, like, it's acknowledgement of what you've gone through. And anyway, so that came out of my head, but that's like, it's definitely healing for me and for everybody that goes. It's all, I think, a field. It's a field of energy that we're talking about, isn't it? Isn't this writing, isn't that all in the same field?
Yes, 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 right. And all art is energy, right? Like writing is energy, music is energy, dance is energy, visual art. Yeah, I definitely believe it's energy based. And when you were talking about how what a beautiful release it is, of the feeling of letting go when you finally journal something, because the the body processes things, and then unless we release it, the body carries and absorbs and holds on to things. That's all energy too, right? And so that's why it's so healthy and so necessary to write it out,
Necessary.
dance it out, sing it out. I'm a great believer in like throat chakra healing through singing. And there's so many ways in which we can process the world around us. There's so much to process right now, right? To process our own lives and experiences and challenges, any illness you've gone through, grief and loss, leaving a job, moving across country. These are all major life events, major things that need to be processed. If we're quiet about these things, if we don't reflect on them in a healthy way, then where do they go? They get stuck in the
I'll just say from experience, they eventually manifest.
yes.
And then
No,
you have to have like a decade of trying to come back up from all of that. And that's where I'm at. Yeah, because I couldn't walk in 2016. And I've lasted. almost 100 pounds too. When you fall in love with yourself, you care about yourself, you know?
That's a beautiful statement right there. Say that again for everyone.
When you fall in love with yourself, you care about yourself.
Mhm.
Um, so let's see. Talk to me a little bit. Just share like your practice or you gotta write. Um, do you have a disciplined time slot or do you write when or both? Or what's life like for Christina
It's
Norcross?
a very good question. But people probably want some kind of formula. And I know that there are writers out there who are very regimented and disciplined. Like, even though I'm an organized person, I edit a literary journal called Blue Heron Review. I'm working to a deadline at the moment to get our spring issue out. I'm very organized about that. When it comes to my own writing, I don't have a set time of day that I write. I don't even write necessarily every single day. I definitely write at least 3 days a week, but it all depends on the week, and what's going on in my life that week. Um, I host and facilitate an online writing prompt group called Connection and Creativity in Challenging Times on Facebook. It's a private group, so we welcome people to come and write and share and not worry about what anyone thinks about their writing. And it's quiet and private and respectful and lovely people. So that guarantees I have to come up with a new prompt every week, and then I always provide a sample poem of my own, and then people write all week, and we share, and it's a very encouraging, welcoming space. So at the very least, I have to write one poem per week. I do write
Mm,
more than that in any given week, but
right.
unlike, I know Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, which I've read several times. Some people wake up and they do their morning pages from 7 to 9 in the morning. I will admit that I do not do that, and yet somehow I've managed to write 10 books. So you don't have to necessarily.
Right. You don't have to do it like that. I don't think there's rules.
No,
At least that's what because I'm trying to understand this whole field. I don't know what stanzas are. I don't know this. I don't know that. Don't quite know. I think prose just means paragraph, a small paragraph. I mean, I can't quite figure out what prose means exactly and
and then
what
there's
makes it
poetry.
different, what makes it, worthy poem. Some
Um,
of the stuff I hear in these circles are every bit as good as I've seen in some of these books, but um yeah, so I'm trying to as an outsider, and part of this whole conversation series is one to let go of that perfectionism thing. That's why we're in a living room. That's why it's unscripted and all this. And I want it more relatable for. I think that, like you said, there's a lot to process in life right now. And if
Absolutely.
somebody picks up a pen and writes for the first darn time because of one of these conversations, it'd make me happy. Um,
It would make me happy too.
yeah. Um, so I appreciate you saying that it doesn't have to be regimented and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be all that. Depends on how much you're juggling in life, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. When we lived in New Hampshire until 2008, and we moved to Wisconsin after that. My sons were 4 years old and 18 months when we moved to Wisconsin. So, and my husband, traveled quite a lot for work. So the only time that I could write was when one or both of them was taking a nap. Well, both of them had to be taking a nap, or when they finally went to sleep at night. So one of the things that I would do for myself, because I wrote all the way through my pregnancies, nursing, and beyond. I wrote because I had to write. That was a provider of wellness for me. So I would get everybody in our minivan and I would drive to Newcastle Beach, and the two boys would be fast asleep, and I would have classical music on in the background, and I would open the window a bit, and I could hear the ocean waves, and I would just sit in the driver's seat and write poetry. And then as soon as I heard the beginnings of stirrings of somebody waking up, I'd be like, okay, time to go home. And I was only a 15-minute car ride from the beach to my house. I'm like, okay,
Beautiful.
get everybody home, but and they would nap for maybe an hour if I was lucky, and then that was my writing time. That was my writing practice.
Wow. So let me, did I hear it right? You got the babies in the car. How old were they?
Um, 4 and 18 months.
Or anything. Wow. Okay. You got them in the car and you just drove there and just had the window down
Yeah, well, they would fall asleep
in
because
your
the
car,
car.
in the car,
Yeah, they would fall asleep.
in
They
the
would be in their
vehicle.
car seats,
No,
and
that's
they would.
beautiful.
Everyone was asleep except me. Yeah, they would fall asleep because the car would just naturally rock them to sleep, and I would park at right at the beach, and I would open the
Yeah.
windows a bit so that the ocean you could hear the sound of the ocean waves,
Nice.
get the salt air, and so it provided me with inspiration and quiet time. Plus, it was like this beautiful place to take a nap for them, and then I would.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a brilliant, I mean, seriously, I don't know if I would have thought to do that. I'm thinking because I mean, if I was a writer, I just don't, I think there's a different, it's an interesting thought process. Uh, you guys, the writers that I'm been experienced to, and you're no exception, y- your level of showing up for yourself is deep, it's good, it's awesome, it's admirable, you
Well,
know?
knew that it was important for me to not let go of my Christina-ness just because I became a mother, because I feel like it made me a better mom to know who I was and to find and receive nourishment for my soul because I was a happy mom and I was able to give from a full cup instead of an empty
Yeah,
cup.
yeah. And I'll tell you, 9 out of 10 ladies that come to my workshops have not done that. And they are, all right, help me pick myself back up from the floor, kind of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. So if you don't mind me asking though, when you were pregnant and you were writing, you said you had to write. Do you mind me asking what you're writing about? Was it your experience of what you're going through, or what did you mostly write about?
Um, when I was pregnant with my second son, I think that's when I was writing my very first book, Land and Sea, which was the ekphrastic poetry collection. And there are at least one or two poems in that book that, deal with the topic of motherhood, but they were ekphrastic poems inspired by painting. So they weren't
Mhm.
necessarily, so yeah, they were poetry inspired by art. And I definitely have poems about motherhood that I wrote during that time and the
Yeah.
experience of being pregnant or the
So you
experience.
were writing poetry. You weren't just writing for your thoughts.
Oh,
You
I
were writing poetry.
I mean they're one
Or
and
is
the
it one and the same?
one
Are
and
they
the
one and the
yeah.
same?
I was
Okay,
writing
so
for me and
so
also
these wild writings that we do, you you come in, either something comes in or even a prompt that you get from something. Anything can be a prompt, right?
Mhm.
It's that's what you take that rough draft and then just say, I'm going to form it into something and just keep forming it. And
Sure.
is that the process?
Uh, I at the height of any writing project, I'll write at least two new poems per week for that project. If I move to, sometimes I'll write a poem that has nothing to do with the book I'm working on because that's just what's coming through. Um, I'll write the rough draft, get the bones down on paper, as Natalie Goldberg would say, and then go back to it maybe the next week or later on in the week and just kind of continue to tweak it and work on it, and put it to one side. I mean, the poem is never really done until I send it off to the publisher, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I'm like, you know, there's no way. I would like the next day be saying, "Oh my God, I wish I'd have thought to put it like that." Let me get I dropped my other headset. Let me find it. Yeah, I mean, I would have this like, I don't know, like I could have done better or something like that. It's just vulnerable as vulnerable as heck putting a book out.
Yes, and maybe I'm just at the point where it hasn't occurred to me that all these people are reading my innermost thoughts. Me, I'm like, I'm just flattered that anyone wants to read them in the first place. I'll just, and maybe
It's just cool.
maybe I'm just okay with it now. I don't know.
Hey, well, I mean, you know, it's just scary. It's just scary because what somebody may do with it, and you have to let go of that. You have no control over that. And I mean, even I would say even interpreting it differently than my intentions would be. But I guess this is kind of all just new thoughts because I'm newer to the field. And if I ever gave anything, I mean, I haven't even tried to have anything polished yet. I'm still in this wild writing thing because um I'm wanting to explore and heal and let all this whatever's in there come out. And it's been interesting and shocking. And I've worked through some things miraculously well. And I think I'm actually getting a little like urge to write. I need to write this down. So I'm starting to feel like that
Good,
almost I got to, which would be cool because
good.
but I think, whatever you practice, you get better at, you become it, you
Absolutely.
know, and
Absolutely.
this sphere of people are just totally amazing. Um, because I think there's no ulterior motives in these group of writers that I've experienced. Everybody's pretty vulnerable, authentic, compassionate, sliding scale half the time. Half the time it's no charge. And it's, I'm gonna go on a limb. I think it's we're sending this energy out and we expect it to come back in some way. We don't know how, we don't know why or where, but it'll
Absolutely.
come back.
When we write, I do believe that we write not just for ourselves, but becoming a more healed version of you is what is bringing goodness to the world, because every interaction you have with others is now from a place of healing. But we write for ourselves. We also write so that others will feel less alone. And that was really one of my objectives with this. Well, all of my books kind of definitely have a spiritual aspect to them, and they're all about healing basically. I mean, I'm calling this the poetry apothecary, but like all of my books could have been called that probably in some respects.
Right.
Um, my hope, my hope against hope is that people will read the poems in this book or my other books and feel less alone in this world, that they will identify with a poem, an experience that I describe in a poem or a feeling, and they'll think, well, I have felt that way too. I feel less alone now because I've read this poem, and it makes me feel as though, well, I can get to the other side of this too, whatever that happens to be.
Hey, you
Uh,
gotta read a couple poems.
I was just realizing as
Yeah,
that
me too.
oops,
I'm like, "Oh my
we've just
gosh, I
been
don't
having
think
so
you've
much
read
fun
anything."
chatting
Well, it's neat conversation, but I have talked a lot. So yes, please read a couple poems here, your favorite ones, or talk about anything you want to talk about here.
yeah, I will definitely read a few poems. I handpicked a few that I thought might be appropriate for our conversation today. Um, so this one is from the Poetry Apothecary. It's on page 98, and it's called Everything Becomes Again. And it's from the section called Grief Work. This poem is actually about any type of form of grief or loss that you might be going through, whether it's losing a loved one, losing a job, losing a sense of self, any kind of loss or disappointment. This can apply to any of those things. Everything becomes again. Everything becomes undone. The dishes in the cupboard, the neatly folded laundry, the tidiness of tomorrow's plans. Everything you've carefully put away will end up in a tangled mess on the living room floor. Those muddied boots, your pale pink humility, your rash of grief, your vulnerable, weary self. Everything will catch up with you. That late night of screen time, those white powdered donuts, that trip you always meant to take, those words you swallowed whole, that neglected ulcer. Everything will be okay, I promise. The lack you carry in a black velvet pouch, the hurt you wear like a tattoo sleeve, the ache you cannot fill with earth. Everything becomes again. The hope filled you from 1995, the green of the backyard where the snapping turtle strolls, the new leaf you still stretching in the soil. Everything, everything becomes again.
Wow, I felt that.
Sometimes we just
Beautiful.
have to believe that everything's going to be okay, you know.
Very nice. Thank you.
Um, Another one I thought I might read is from the section called Nourishment. This one is called Sacred Pause, and it's really a celebration of the senses. Um, I am a lover of hot showers and hot baths. My husband can attest to the fact that I will spend forever in the shower because I have a back. I have back injuries from being a
I
dancer.
like my shower too. I have one shower that we call the luxurious one, and the other one's express. And it depends how much time I have.
Right,
Well,
right.
Steve will say, "Well, one you taking today?" I'm saying, "I'm taking luxurious
Luxurious shower. Well, this is all
because I
about.
have a little more time, you know."
um, Absolutely. I'm a big believer in the luxurious shower. This one's called Sacred Pause. The steady drumbeat of water leads my limbs in a salsa dance, hot steam mixing with the scent of lemon verbena, patchouli. Triple milled soap suds glide and coat my shoulders, swirling circles of clean. I raise my chin, breathe in the sacred holy moments of pause. Sometimes I place my hands over my heart, slow my movements to slow my pulse, feel the intensity of heat pinking my skin. I wash off yesterday, allow pores to open, welcoming the new story of now with an open heart chakra glow. I dance with my clean outline, feel the floor beneath me, in sync with shower rhythm, waterfall flow, footsteps walking towards some unknown destination, some not yet known celebration of an undiscovered me.
Oh, I love that one. I love that one. Thank you.
Do we have time for one more poem
Of
or
course we do. We're in charge. We could do whatever we want.
this is fun. If you want to just keep listening, we'll just be here. We'll be here all afternoon. Um, let's see. I, I did make choices, but then you make other choices. Okay, I might.
We're allowed to change.
We're allowed to change. Okay, so I am
Sure.
going to mix things up. I wasn't
Cool.
originally going to read
Cool.
from this book. Try
I
something else.
love it.
This
Love it.
my most recent book that came out before the Poetry Apothecary is called The Sound of a Collective Pulse. And it's
Beautiful cover too.
thank you. Yeah, this well, I'll go back to this real quick before I do this poem. I just want to give a shout out to The cover artist of the Poetry Apothecary is my dear friend Kim Nelson, who is a Wisconsin visual artist. And I asked her for a painting of a Luna moth, which represents transformation and change. And not only did she paint the Luna moth, but she added the phases of the moon to it.
Ah,
So
yeah, it is beautiful. And her name again?
her name is Kim Nelson.
Kim Nelson. Thanks
Uh,
for sharing that. Good job, Kim.
so uh, the other book that I'll read a poem from, "The Sound of a Collective Pulse." This artwork is actually from Unsplash. It's not a personal
Cool though.
of mine, but very cool. The cover photo is by an artist named Chris Charles. So I want to make sure I give a shout out properly to the artist for
Cool,
this cover as well.
cool.
And this
Yeah,
was
that's cool that you guys do that too. Everybody makes sure everybody gets credit where credit's due, and
very important.
sometimes you don't know who where it came from though too.
Well, and if you're putting it on your cover, or if you're making reference to an artwork, then it's very important to credit the artist. Yeah, I'm a
Hmm.
believer in that.
Yeah, I mean, in this field of writers, everybody's very sharing of their love, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, pardon me while I find the poem
Hmm.
because I wasn't.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, I'm going to take a second and then go back to this first poem you read, that everything becomes again. When you read the hope filled you from 1995, I'm like my starts reeling. Okay, what was 1995? Where was I? And boy,
Oh,
that's a long time ago.
it's the year I got married. Yes, I'm coming up on my 30th wedding anniversary. So
Sure.
it is a long time ago. Okay, so this poem that I'll read is called "Breathing Peace," and this was published in the James Kruse anthology, "The Wonder of Small Things,"
Mm.
and it was also published in "The Sound of a Collective Pulse." So I thought I would read that one. Breathing Peace. If peace was something we could hold in our hands, we would mold it like clay. We would shape it into a circle, leaving our thumbprint on it, then carefully pass it into the knowing hands of the next person, as if handling a newborn sparrow. If peace was something we could breathe, we would close our eyes and savor the precious air flowing into our lungs, passing through our lips. That exhale would be a prayer. It would be a song in three-part harmony. If peace was something we could taste, it would be figs drizzled with honey. We would arrange it on a plate with a silk petaled sunflower decorating the center. We would pass the plate around with reverence, ensuring that every single person received nourishment. If peace was something we could walk to, it would be a sacred labyrinth of circles. We would greet each other on the meditative path. We would come together at the center and admire our cohesive union, arms raised to the sun, rejoicing in what we could not see or touch, but we could feel it. We have been walking together for such a long time. We have always been at peace, but we become lost in the forgetting.
Mm. Oh, take that note and hold it in your pocket.
We need peace right now, right?
Boy, is that powerful right now. Yeah, for sure.
Well,
For sure. Do you want to say anything about our workshop?
sure. Please sign up. We're going to have fun. It's the whole month of July, right? Starting
Yeah,
July
so that
10th.
first week, that the
Yeah.
10th, the 10th is when it starts. But yeah, those last four Thursdays in July.
Thursdays in July. And it's an hour and a half session each session. It is a free offering, and we'll have writing prompts. I'll read a few poems. during each session, and it'll be a beautiful experience. I'm
Yeah,
hoping and looking
I
forward.
know it will be. I know it will be. And it's based on the Poetry Apothecary. So I'm not sure which section, or it might, I would imagine it's gonna be one section per
Sure. Right.
workshop, right? Yeah.
We have
Um,
which we're doing first, but we'll
well,
work on
you just let me know what you feel called.
it. Sure.
And
Yeah.
you choose the poems you feel called for it, and then we'll go from there. I'll bring the om,
We'll bring the
and you
on.
bring that. But yeah, so that is sign up at zenfulconversations.com. It is free, it is open to everybody. And I know that is going to be awesome. July 10th, 4 p.m. Eastern, Thursday, July 10th, 4 p.m. Eastern. The Poetry Apothecary, Christina M.R. Norcross, absolutely beautiful woman. A new friend, I can say, hey, new friend, new friend.
Absolutely.
Do you want to say anything before we close up shop about
Um,
any way to get into contact with you, if or anything like
sure.
that?
My website
A
is
web address.
very simple. It is www.CRISTINANORCROSS.com. You can also find me on Instagram. I believe I'm at Christina MR Norcross on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have both an author page and a personal page on Facebook, and I'm always happy to chat with people who reach out about the writing process. And all of my books can be found on my website. It gives you links to either the publisher's website, or it can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and such. But
Cool.
more than anything, I just want to give a very heartfelt, soulful thank you to you, ZenJen, for having me as your guest today. And this has been just a lovely, soul nourishing
No.
experience.
Well, I thank you just for having conversation and being vulnerable. And some people is what it is, if they're finding out it's not unedited, they're backing out of it because they want it to be edited. And we need each other right now. None of us, no, we're all winging it. We're all winging it best we know how. And if we can share with each other, that's where it goes. That's the whole thing. So thanks for being part of it. Thanks for sharing. Really, thank you for saying yes. So we'll talk soon, and Thursday, July 10th, we'll be hooking up.
Right? It's going to be terrific. It's going to be lots of fun.
All right, in gratitude to you, and gratitude to you, everybody, for coming by and listening. And stay tuned for more. Namaste. Namaste.